So I'm getting into the Dune series, and I just finished the first book of Dune, and it's a pretty good read. During my reading, I would picture the characters and setting similar from the Dune and Dune Part 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve, but as I was reading the book, there's another movie that I remember that was filmed and released way earlier. Dune has got some film adaptations and even a couple TV shows. But beside Denis' films, another film stood out in the midst. In 1984, Dune, directed by David Lynch, would be released. With a budget of $42 million, director David Lynch attempts to tackle this popular science fiction novel by Frank Herbert.
I think this is probably the worst thing that's being released this Christmas. I really hated the film.
Wish Aroma the Educated Skunk were here, because if it were up to me, and the Picking the Skunk of the Week is a joint enterprise on this show, if it were up to me, Aroma would be here. Because Dune, one of 5 science fiction films being released this holiday season, is the worst, according to me, by a wide margin. It's physically ugly. It contains at least a dozen gory gross-out scenes. Some of its special effects are cheap, surprisingly cheap, because this film cost a reported $40 to $45 million, and its story is confusing beyond belief.
I sold out. So it was a slow dying the death, and a terrible experience.
When the film was released in 1984, it was met with mostly negative reviews. Critics cited this movie with bad special effects, incoherent story, and confusing plot, and lost in translation from the original source material. Me, as someone who's recently getting into Dune, I decided to watch the film, and unfortunately, yeah, it's pretty bad. In this video, I'm going to go over what makes this film so bad. Towards the end though, I'll say some things I liked, since I want to leave this on a more positive note. Also, spoilers for those who have not watched the movies or read the books. But with all that being said, let's get right into it. Dune 1984 is adapting the first book of the Dune series. The same book was adapted by Denis Villeneuve with his 2 movies. Now, here's the problem. The first book that starts this series is 800 pages, the longest book of the series, and David Lynch is attempting to adapt this whole book within 2 hours and 17 minutes. Denis Villeneuve needed 2 films to adapt this book, and even then he had to make some cuts and changes, some for the worse and some a little better, to end up with a good adaptation. But David Lynch attempts this with 1 film. Already they're trying to pack so much into 1 movie, and David Lynch himself, that it hurt the film.
There's some things about it, but overall, it was squeezed, because in those days, the maximum length they figured I could have is 2 hours and 17 minutes, and that's what the film is. So they wouldn't lose a screening a day. And so it's, again, money talking, and not for the film at all. And so it was like compacted, and it hurt it. It hurt it.
This situation results in all kinds of disasters, like cutting important scenes, rushing scenes which ruins pacing, and or long and dragged exposition to explain the plot. These are things you do not want in a movie, especially when you're adapting another source material. Now that I kind of discussed the situation the producers are left with, let's take a look at the actual movie. The first 4 minutes and 34 seconds are complete exposition.
A beginning is a very delicate time. That it is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah, and the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas.
The first 2 minutes and 30 seconds show Princess Uralon literally explaining spice, its value, and the planet Arrakis. The remainder of the time we have a robotic voice explaining the planets and whose house it belongs to, which is such a waste of time because when the movie transitions over to other planets, there would be text showing the name and who lived there, so this little exposition time is pointless. In the real first scene we get, we're shown Pitisha Emperor talking with the guild, which is actually kinda cool. The way the guild is portrayed is interesting, and the special effects are actually pretty good, at least at that time it was released. They discuss the plan to take down the Atreides house, and the guild mentions they need to kill Paul Atreides, the son of the Duke Leto Atreides, and then the story picks up from there. The film follows the exact same story as the book. The first act isn't too bad, I actually kind of enjoyed it, but it's not easy to ignore the immediate flaws such as pacing. In the new movies, time was able to be taken for things to slow down and let the audience process what was happening. For example, back in the Paul and Gurney training, it takes the scene slow to process and break down, and good enough time for us to process it, while in Lynch's version, it happens so suddenly and swiftly to a point where it feels really unnatural and rushed.
Shield practice.
Shield practice? Gurney, we had practice this morning. I'm not in the mood.
Not in the mood. Mood's a thing for cattle and love play, not fighting.
I'm sorry, Gurney.
Not sorry enough.
You can tell quickly that the movie needed to move forward, and they tried to cram whatever they thought were important in. And there were so many scenes like that are just rapid, like the introduction of Duncan, the box scene, the arrival to Arrakis, and more. Because of this, some major important characters aren't built up well, like Jessica, Gurney, and Duncan. And the other fault is that other scenes are not really well built up. For example of the characters, in the books, before the Harkonnens attack, the book takes its time to explore Jessica, her relationships with her family, the situation she's in, and the other servants and the Duke's men, which builds and explores her character. While in Lynch's film, the only real scenes we get is the brief interaction between her and the Reverend Mother where she is scolding Jessica, and the scene between her and Dr. Yue where she suspects him. Everything else is just so quick and sudden, and no real build-up at all, really. It's like, here you go, now let's move on. Boom. It's so fast. And even then, some characters are not even given the spotlight they deserve, and when they do, they're quickly rushed and butchered. Two examples of this are Lyot Kynes and Dr. Yue. In the book, Dr. Yue's betrayal to Leto is so deep, and he says so much that really speaks a lot about his character.
I'm sorry, my dear Duke, but there are things which will make greater demands than this. He touched the diamond tattoo on his forehead. I find it very strange, myself an override on my pyretic conscience, but I wish to kill a man. Yes, I actually wish it. I will stop at nothing to do it. He looked down at the Duke. Oh, not you, my dear Duke. The Baron Harkonnen. I wish to kill the Baron. Leto stared up at you, seeing madness in the man's eyes, the perspiration along brow and chin. You were dead anyway, my poor Duke, you said. You lowered himself to one knee beside the Duke. I made a shaitan's bargain with the Baron, and I must be certain he has fulfilled his half of it. When I see him, I'll know. When I look at the Baron, then I will know. But I'll never enter his presence without the price. You're the price, my poor Duke. And I'll know when I see him. My poor Wanna taught me many things, and one is to see certainty of truth when the stress is great. I cannot do it always, but when I see the Baron then, I will know.
But in the movie, they leave all of that out, and the important line they do keep in is rushed and quickly ignored with no further exploration.
I've brought House Atreides down.
Why?
I wish to kill a man. Not you, my dear Duke. You were already dead. But you'll get close to the Baron before you die. You'll be tied and drugged, but you can still attack. You can still attack. When you see the Baron, you'll have a new poison gas tooth.
Other than that line, he just explains the tooth mechanic, and that's it. The other example is Lyot Kynes. The last scene we get with Lyot Kynes is the Harkonnens just discussing disposing of him, and that's it. Nothing after which I see is a real disrespect to his character, and it's something I also fault Denis' films on as well. While he shows Kyne's death, it's not as impactful or meaningful as the books. Lyot Kyne's death in the book is so much different and so meaningful and deep that says a lot about humans' control of nature and the consequences and evil of trying to play like God. His death has so much to say, and both movies have not been able to at all end his character off as well. And those are just two examples of really important and key moments of the story. A lot of poetic moments of the book are either cut out or seriously rushed in this movie. So many things are either cut or just explained through boring exposition, and this hurts the film, making things seem way unimpactful and rushed. Even to the arrival of Arrakis, the Denis films takes time to explore this world, the people, the economy, and beliefs, while in Lynch's Dune, we only have the sandworm and the harvester seed, and everything else is just told us in exposition rather than being showed, and then sooner or later the Harkonnens attack. It makes the arrival to Arrakis feel a lot shorter, and it just makes it feel like we haven't learned much at all. I know I'm not mentioning the story as much, but if you read the books or watch the new movies, then you don't need me to go over it. It's the exact same thing, but worse. The first hour and 30 minutes adapts book Dune and a little over half of Muad'Dib, or Dune Part 1 made by Denis, which means the last 45 minutes adapts the entirety of Dune Part 2 made by Denis, or the rest of Muad'Dib and the Prophet book. Remember, this whole movie, Dune Part 2, in 45 minutes. And because of that, so many things are cut and left out and or rushed, and it's painfully obvious. The first act of the film, despite how packed and rushed through things were, it was okay. Not too bad, but it was until the Harkonnen attack on the Atreides house when everything began to go downhill. After Jessica and Paul are left stranded in the desert, they are quick to escape a worm and quickly meet the Fremen, and they immediately accept Paul, already giving his name Usul, and not even 30 seconds after, Paul is then called Muad'Dib. In the books and new movies, Paul had to work to get the respect and honor he gets from the Fremen. He had to defeat Jawas in a fight and adapt to their ways. While writing the script, I actually found out that there actually was a Jawas fight, but the decision was made to cut it out. Although the fight and the dialogue is unserious, it would have been better to keep it in. I think they may have cut this out to shorten the film, but that's the problem. It's an 800-page book. And I'll discuss more of that later in the video. The process takes time and it feels more natural and quote-unquote deserved. Rather, in this movie, it's painfully forced. And this leads to so many rushed subjects of the movie, like the character of Stilgar and his friendship with Paul, the way Paul slowly adapts to this false messianic figure that tries to manipulate the Fremen, the reunion with Gurney, introduction to the villains, and especially Paul's and Chani's relationship. Now, the book had a similar issue with the relationship taking off a little too fast, but literally in the second scene of this movie with Chani, they kiss. And then we hear Paul's monologue saying he's always loved Chani, but again, it's so forced and unnatural because we haven't seen their relationship develop, like at all. It's more developed in Denis' movies, and while it's not as developed as in the books, you would get a little more dialogue and small moments between them, more at least than what Lynch's film gave. And all of these cuts and rushed moments also make the big moments the film leaves in more hollow and unimpactful. For example, towards the ending where Paul faces off against Fade, we never really see Fade fight in the arena, nor how strong he is or why the people fear him. It's just been somewhat told, and that's it. And given that the Harkonnens are very campy in this movie,
he who controls the spice controls the universe, and what Pita did not tell you. I want you to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. Give me spice. The Duke will die before these eyes, and he'll know that it is I, then Vladimir Harkonnen, who encompasses his doom. Where's my doctor?
I mean, Baron is a little campy in the books, but the movie takes it on a whole different level. These things make the villains less intimidating, and in a weird way, it's odd how these guys were able to surprise the Atreides. At this point, I don't think I need to go over the rest of the movie. Now, a little fun fact here, there is 2 hours worth of footage that was cut to make the film meet the timeline demandment. The original cut of this film was a little over 4 hours long, and it's not a surprise since this is a big book. And there are a lot of scenes within that footage that could have made this movie an actual decent adaptation, but to meet the requirement, Lynch had to cut scenes or make bridges in order to replace them.
2 weeks after we completed principal photography with the actors, we had an assembly, and this assembly was 4 hours and 20 minutes long. And I think that that's when the concern happened that the movie was going to be impossible to tell that story in a 2.5-hour version. And so in order to make it intelligible, something had to go, because, you just can't take 4 hours, and it's a complex, it's a complex story. It's a difficult story anyhow. A lot of characters, a lot of words. David wrote a scene that would help bridge some of the footage that was eliminated from the cut.
All in all, the film is rushed, not well built, and follows up with scenes that feel unimpactful and underdeveloped, leaving it up to cut scenes or expositions to tie it all together. And one of these ways, as well as the effect of this hindrance, is the internal monologuing we would get in characters.
Yes. Perhaps he would have that. He sabotaged the house generators. We are wide open.
Spice. Pure, unrefined spice.
I must admit, against all better judgment, I like this Duke.
This can be effective in certain genres like anime or books, but for films like this, it's a lazy way to explain a character's emotions or even their thoughts. Perhaps they did this since the books did it, but it's a motion picture. A movie and a book are 2 completely different medias. You'll have random thoughts just interjecting in any given moment. It's lazy. Now, there is a right way to do this. An example is Avatar by James Cameron. The monologues work because they're not just placed in randomly. They're Jake's video logs, and it's practical. Using it the way Lynch's film does, you either think your audience is dumb or you think your work can speak for itself. Another thing I like to discuss are the special effects in CGI. For example, look at the shield fight between Paul and Gurney. It's so awful, and you can tell the workers on this struggle to follow the actors' movements. And you may think I'm being unfair because it was released in 1984, but even then there were a bunch of well done effects like Star Wars, and you're telling me in the midst of these we get something like this? I'll admit, some of the creatures and stuff look really good because I'm pretty sure they just built these worms and such, but others like these spaceship flying effects and the guild traveling, they're painfully bad. The Empire Strikes Back, which was released in 1980, 4 years before this movie, had a budget of $30 million, and you're telling me they can pull this off, but Dune with a film of over 40 million couldn't do at least decent shield effects? Come on, even the flying spaceships and stuff look awful. And while on this subject, I do want to talk about the movie and its animals. There were 3 times in this movie, well 4 actually, but I'm only going to be mentioning 3 because these ones are the ones that are disturbing. One scene was the cocktail of a bug being squeezed, which wasn't in the books. Another scene was one of the Harkonnens ripping a tongue from a dead cow and eating it, which also wasn't in the books. I actually looked it up to see if it was real or not, and I never really got a clear answer, so if it is real, that's disturbing and not in a good way for me at least, but I don't think it's real. But there is another scene which was what kind of made the movie controversial, and it was this scene where a cat was strung in a box, supposed to be milked with a rat tape next to it. This isn't in the book, so I have no idea why they added this. My guess is to show the cruelty and evilness of the Harkonnens, which is something they use animals a lot for, like these scenes here, but this one is just so weird. And to be honest, it was kind of uncomfortable to watch because the cat just seemed like it was trying to get out. It looked so uncomfortable, so it was not a good scene to watch. With all of this combined, plus with David Lynch himself hating the movie that he himself directed, many times he bashed this version of the film. It's no wonder that the movie failed. And it's sad because from the knowledge of the extra footage he recorded and from the interviews, it seemed like he actually wanted to do this project but couldn't. And because of that, he hated the film he was making and it wasn't a good experience for him. All of that leading to say that this movie was doomed from the start, and it's no surprise it wasn't really received well. But are there things to like about this film? Yeah, I think so. Not all the special effects are awful. The sandworms and guilds are actually pretty cool. I also like the movie's aesthetic. It's not as well directed and filmed as Denis' movies, but it's still pretty cool. The acting was decent, not the best, but not the worst either. And I think that's all I have to say. Honestly, I thought there would be more, but I guess not. While David Lynch's Dune is not the worst thing in the world, I wouldn't call it a faithful adaptation of the original source material, and the main lesson that we can learn from this is said by the man David Lynch himself.
It just nailed this idea, never, ever do a film without Final Cut.
I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Feel free to share, leave a like, and subscribe, as all of these do support my channel greatly. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll respond to them. God bless, and I'll see you all in the next one.